Hey baby, you're probably still drinking with your friends. I promised you that I would read another chapter, and I'm up way later than I'm supposed to be, and I've got a lot of work still to do, but I'm going to keep my promise to you. You probably won't watch it tonight, but I wanted to get it done. So, starting with chapter 2. Air, Aldrich said, checking the items of gear over the stern of the boat. 1, 2, 3 cylinders, weighted belts, boots. Last time, Lex realized suddenly, we were just walking on the bottom, but these are ordinary magnet-soled space boots. I don't want to be dragged feet first against the hull every time I go close. By the way, I feel really stupid reading this goofy space book when you're reading me this beautiful novella. Anyway. Thought of that, Sheffy said briefly. I told Aldrich to change the magnets for chunks of lead, but we couldn't find any. He had to make do with plain steel. Go on, Aldrich. Net bags, Lex. Don't pick up anything which we'll have to haul up on a cable, will you? I'm not sure how stable this boat is, and I'd hate to be tipped into the water. 1 waterproof hand light. At least it says it's waterproof. 2 hatchets, the best we could think of in the way of weapons. There's absolutely no means of making an energy gun fire underwater. Cheffy tells me that they used to use compressed air for underwater guns, so I'll get to work on one as soon as I can think of something expendable enough to use as ammunition. Don't expend it, Lex suggested. Use something long enough to tie a cord to. We have plenty of that. There are things down there, Aldrich countered sourly with a jerk of his thumb at the sea, which I would not care to be tied to if they took off for deep water. Of course, if you want the thrill of a submarine joyride in the wake of a hurt and angry monster. Point taken, Lex said and grinned. I'm glad. We don't want to lose more people than we have to. And what do you think of our new anchor? Aldrich held up a shiny metal object consisting of a shaft and 4 spiked curved tines. On the shaft was a coarse spiral thread, and fitted loosely on this was a rotating collar bearing 4 sharp blades. If this gets caught in bottom weeds or some beastie tries to cling to it, you haul on the cable sharply. This releases the spring catch, see, and the blades spiral up the shaft. He gave it an approving pat and placed it in the boat. Sheffy, are you going with them, or shall I? I'll go. You can make the next trip. Sheffy swung his legs over the side of the boat. Push us out a few yards, will you? And mind where you put your feet. Lex scrambled lightly aboard and took the bow thwart. Okay, Captain, he called to Arbogast. But Arbogast was staring toward the sunken spaceship again, his hands hooked together in front of him, his knuckles bright white. He didn't seem to have hurt. All set, Captain? Aldrich said sharply. Arbogast let his hands fall to his sides. He swallowed hard before speaking. I changed my mind. I'm not going. What? Aldrich took a pace toward him. Sheffy, startled, paused in the act of setting the oars in the rowlocks. Only Lex, slewed around on his thwart so he could see the captain, gave a slow nod. He hadn't been altogether unprepared for this. Arbogast bowed his head and walked off up the beach, his dragging feet leaving smeared marks. The dying horror, pegged to the ground, sensed his passage and hunched once more to try to strike at him. Now, just a moment, Aldrich said hotly, starting after him. You can't leave Lex to... Aldrich! Lex launched the name on the air like a dart. Aldrich, let him alone. The hell? Aldrich snapped. Look, it was his idea. He should go, wasn't it? Are we to waste another hour finding a suit to fit me or Sheffy, have it tied up, go hunting for different boots? It took most of yesterday to find enough wearable kit. Keep your temper, Lex said. Think of it this way. How would you like to go see your old home wrecked and smashed with alien creatures crawling in every corner? Did I suggest it? Did I? Aldrich wiped his face. And, hell, talk about homes being wrecked and smashed. Calm down, Aldrich, Sheffy said. Lex is right. At least you won't have to see what's become of our homes. He spat over the side of the boat. Aldrich drew a deep breath. Okay, he said resignedly. Let's go hunt out a suit for me. Lex hesitated, thinking wryly about how just a few minutes ago he had rebuked Delvia for taking risks. But he excused himself. A survey of the ship was essential before tomorrow's assembly, when they were due to take stock of their resources. He said, "I can go down by myself." "You're crazy," Aldrich said. "Without the phone? Where we don't know half the species of sea life around here? When it's likely the rutting season for things as dangerous as that multi-limbed horror Bendel had to nail down? You're apt to wind up as stock nourishment for a clutch of eggs." "I'll keep my hatchet in my hand." "Oh, get in the boat." Lex was suddenly impatient. "We need to know what's happened inside the ship." And as another argument struck him, "I did 2 dives last fall, damn it, and the captain hasn't done 1 before. It's quite likely safer for me on my own." Aldrich shrugged. "Okay, but I don't have to like it." He bent to the stern, leaned his full weight against it, and pushed it free of the sand. It rocked violently as he jumped aboard. For a minute or so, Sheffy fumbled with the oars, finding them hard to synchronize. Then he abruptly got the hang of it, and the boat began to move steadily over the calm water. On the beach, Bendel's team paused in their work to watch. Arbogast was plodding on without turning. Lex saw Delvia and Nelene talking agitatedly, obviously about the captain. He hoped neither they nor anyone else would run after him demanding explanations. Determinedly, he looked ahead toward the tarnished but still gleaming spaceship. It was possible to see how the curve continued below the surface, but it would be some time before they were close enough to tell what part of the vessel was uppermost. As a mode of progress, rowing a boat was apparently inferior even to walking. "It's moved 500 yards at least," Aldrich said from the stern. "Lex, how do you imagine it traveled so far?" "Rolled, I guess. Too heavy to have floated out. Who would have predicted that on a moonless world, hence effectively a tideless one, no beach was stable? There were no meteorologists among their panicky handful of fugitives. In fact, there were hardly any trained personnel. So that a dilettante like Sheffy and a hobbyist like Aldrich had emerged as leaders where technical matters were concerned." He went on, "If I remember the old layout correctly, that whole stretch of ground where the ship rested must have been undermined, and we know the bottom shelves gently. As soon as it rolled enough for the locks to admit water, there was nothing to stop it sinking deep into the seabed. Must have been as fluid as a pumping slurry with the currents." "If only the locks hadn't been open," Sheffy said. "Remember that noise? Wind blowing across the opening, making the whole ship sing as though it were playing the organ at its own funeral. I hope I never hear anything so eerie again." Lex and Aldrich were silent for a moment, remembering not only the noise, which they would carry in mind until they died, but other things. Arbogast losing his temper when he realized what the sound was, and attempting to reach the ship in a 90-mile gale with waves breaking over the hull, and railing against the fool who left the locks open. Until it was worked out he must have done it himself, because he had been trying to persuade everyone to shelter aboard during the winter instead of trusting themselves to ramshackle huts of planking and piled dirt. "Why did we pick this place, anyway?" Aldrich grumbled. "Reckon we'd have done better on high ground?" Sheffy countered. No, probably not. "Lex, what do you suppose has become of the others? Think they lived through the winter?" "Maybe. Don't see why not. In fact, I don't see why," Aldrich put in. "They haven't contacted us since the storms gave over, have they?" "They could simply have lost their antennas," Lex said. "Remember, they did at least have the ship's hull for shelter. A gale could hardly have made that roll." "So I hear," Sheffy said, "like a squashed egg. And wasn't Arbogast pleased? Thinking he'd put down badly until he saw what the other captain had done? What's his name, the other captain, I mean?" "Gomes?" Lex supplied. "Yeah. The ship was badly cracked. And Aldrich said, they'll have had sub-zero temperatures much longer than us. They'll probably ice solid, half buried in snow. At least the salt spray of the sea kept that from happening to us. But there were chunks of ice in the river until 2 or 3 days ago." "You don't have to tell me," Sheffy said. Trying to look over his shoulder, he lost control of the oars and had to fight to stay on his thwart. "Ha! I wasn't designed for traveling backwards. How much further?" "We're past halfway," Lex said. "I'll row back to shore," Aldrich offered. "Who knows? The boat may be lighter on the return trip instead of heavier. Something snapped at the port oar a second later, as though to underline the grimness of his humor. Where the blade lifted again, it carried with it a writhing creature, wet, shiny pink in color, which had sunk its fangs into the wood of the blade. "Damn nuisance," Sheffy said in a resigned voice. "Aldrich, I told you these things ought to be made out of metal, aluminum for choice, hollow too." "When I get my electric furnaces rigged, I'll let you know," Aldrich retorted. "Can you shake it off?" Sheffy shipped the starboard oar awkwardly, then put both hands to the other and flailed it around. The creature emitted a gust of yellow fluid that discolored the sea, but clung fast. "Torn the oar around," Lex said, picking up his hatchet. With some difficulty, Sheffy complied, and Lex knocked the beast flying. It had left puncture marks in the wood, deep as nail holes. "Having second thoughts about diving alone?" Aldrich inquired. Lex shook his head. "Those teeth wouldn't get through the suit fabric, though if there's any strength in the jaws, I would get a nasty pinch and a lasting bruise. But from the way it stuck to the oar, I suspect the species preys on fishing birds. Which reminds me, hey," he sat up straight, eyes searching the sky. "Where are they? This bay was full of them last night." "Perhaps they're migrants," Aldrich offered. "We'll probably see 'em back now that the weather's turned." "Seen any land birds?" Lex asked. "I saw a few yesterday." "Me, I wouldn't have noticed. Been too busy since the thaw. We can ask Bendel about that when we get back." Aldrich turned the tiller a little and peered past Sheffy. "Getting close now," he reported. "Have the anchor ready, Lex." "Right." He picked it up carefully, avoiding the scythe-like blades. That would certainly shock any bottom prowler which tried to hang on to it. An unsuspected trap, like the one which had sunk their starship. He hadn't answered Aldrich's question. Why did they pick the place? Any more than Sheffy had. They'd chosen it because both sea and land teemed with life, offering a double range of potential foodstuffs. Any ocean is a repository of salts, and if they couldn't eat the native protoplasm or needed to supplement it, then simple processing of seawater would provide trace elements for the diet synthesizers. There was a river mouth running back into a sheltered valley, and near fresh water was a logical site for a settlement. There were tree-like growths, and wood was a material you could work with hand tools. Oh, the choice hadn't been made lightly, and in almost every way it was a good one. Mark you, the way in which it hadn't been good might conceivably prove disastrous. Now, in the clear water, he could see far down, the curving side of the hull. At about the limit of vision there was soft darkness and a motion not entirely due to the changing angle of the boat rocked. Lex shivered. "I'm not cast in the right mold for a hero." Last summer, when they had improvised their underwater technique for the recovery of Bendel's son, it had been easy. He hadn't given a second thought to the obvious logic of the plan. Air, an impervious suit, boots that proved just right to keep the feet down, weights on a belt, and straight ahead for the job. But he'd had a lot of time for second thoughts during the winter. Still, this too was something that had to be done. "Stop rowing, Sheffy," he said, pleased with the levelness of his voice. He cast the anchor overside. It sank, gleaming as he cut out the cable. Mindful of the spring release activating the knife blades, he gave it only the gentlest of tugs to seat it, then knotted the cable to the bow pin. "Here's your belt," Sheffy said. "Put it on while I hitch up your air." "Right." Belt, boots, hatchet, hand light, net bag. He weighed about 10 pounds short of neutral buoyancy. He would sink gently to the bottom. When he wanted to return, he would discard the belt and rise slowly, or open the valve on both air tanks wide, filling the suit so full it would shoot to the surface like a bubble. Easy. Why was he sweating so much? Because of what he was now convinced he would find? "Air's coupled," Sheffy said. "Right. Wish me luck." Lex set his helmet on his head, and with a quick twist, seated it against the ceiling ring. For better or worse, this was it. That's Chapter 2. Chapter 3 is next. I'm signing off quick for the night. I love you, baby. I hope you had a great night. It sounds like you did. Hope you feel good in the morning. You're pretty drunk. I'll talk to you soon.